So, good evening to one and all, respected ma'am. My name is Deepjyoti Basumatary, and I'm from International Business. So, my topic on the human violation is I'm referring from the case study, which is the Narmada Dam displacement and tribal rights violation, a case study on human rights violation. So, moving to the introduction, we have. The Narmada Dam project is one of the India's largest and most controversial infrastructural initiatives aimed at harnessing the waters of the Narmada River to provide irrigation, drinking water, and hydroelectric power. However, the project is to be implemented and and has also been synonymous with mass displacement and severe human rights violation, particularly affecting tribal communities. So moving to the background, the background of the project, the Narmada Valley project comprises a series of dams along the Narmada River. The most significant of these is the Sardar Sarovar Dam located in Gujarat. Objective to provide irrigation to over 1.8 million hectares, supply drinking water to drought-prone areas, and generate hydroelectric power. Scale involves submerging thousands of hectares of land across Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. Beneficiaries primarily urban populations and industries. Victims tribal communities living along the river banks who lost their homes and livelihoods. So, coming to the human rights violation, a forced displacement violation to right to livelihood. Over 250,000 people, primarily tribal communities, were displaced. The primary livelihood sources, agriculture, fishing, and forest produce were destroyed. Rehabilitation policies promises equivalent agriculture land, but most displaced families either receive rocky, uncultivated land or no compensation at all. So, violation to right and dignity, loss of ancestral lands. Tribal people have deep cultural ties to their ancestral lands. The submergence of villages erase centuries-old heritage and social bonds. Inadequate rehabilitation, even after the Supreme Court's order, many families remain inadequate rehabilitated in living in temporary shelters without basic amenities. In some cases, compensations was provided in the form of cash rather than land, which proved ineffective due to a lack of financial literacy among displaced families. Next, we have lack of informed consent and participation. No prior consultation. The tribal communities were not adequately informed or consulted during the planning and execution of the project. Ignore voices. The Narmada Bachao Andolon (NBA) led by Meda Patkar mobilized the affected people to demand fair rehabilitation, but their demands were largely sidelined. Moving to the next slide, we have human rights violation, lack of participation. So, uh, protests and advocacy, the Narmada Bachao Andolon (NBA), the NBA emerged as a grassroots movement advocating for the rights of displaced community object halt the construction until rehabilitation was completely seek compensation and justice for affected families. Methods: peaceful protests, hunger strikes, and filing petition in the Supreme Court of India. Support and backlash: received widespread support from civil rights activists, environmentalists, and international human rights organizations. This faced opposition from state government and industries benefiting from the project. Moving to the next slide, we have uh, legal battles, legal battles and outcomes. Supreme Court verdict 2000. The court allowed the dam's construction to continue but mandated proper rehabilitation. However, on ground implementation was poor, leading to continued protest. World Bank's withdrawal 1993, initially funded by the World Bank, the project faced international criticisms after an independent review highlighted rehabilitation failures. The World Bank withdrew its financial support following the review. Recent development 2017, the dam was declared completely, but thousands of displaced families still lack adequate rehabilitation. Government stance. So moving to the next, we have analytics and ethical dilemmas. The Narmada Dam case raises a significant ethical questions: development versus human rights. Can infrastructure protests justify displacing marginalized communities without fair compensations? State responsibility. Did the government adequately protect the rights of indigenous people while pursuing economic development? Long-term impact. Even decades later, the displaced continue to struggle with poverty, social isolation, and loss of cultural heritage. Lessons learned during this is inclusive development planning, infrastructure projects must integrate the voices of those directly affected, right to rehabilitation, comprehensive resettlement plans are essentially before initiating such large-scale projects. So, legal safeguards, strengthened existing frameworks to ensure that displacement does not lead to human rights violations. So, conclusion, I would like to say the Narmada Dam displacement case remains a critical lessons on the need to balance in development with human dignity as India continues to pursue large-scale infrastructural projects. It is vital to ensure that human rights are not compromised in the name of progress. So my final thought is that development is meaningful only when it uplifts communities rather than uprooting them. So I have come across with some points that would help in improvement of those human rights violations. So first, I think they should legal safeguards and policy reforms, strengthen rehabilitation laws, enforce the right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement Act 2013 effectively. Mandatory free displacement impact assessment conduct through social and environmental impact assessment SEIA to understand the human costs before initiating projects, right to return, guarantee that displaced people have the options to return if promised rehabilitation fails, sustainable development. Next, we have sustainable development models, alternative water management, prior, prioritize smaller community managed water system over large dams, eco-friendly infrastructure, incorporate sustainable practices that minimize environmental and social impacts. Impact minimizes use geo-mapping technologies to identify less disruptive sites for development. So, ethical governance, human rights impacts assessment, HRIA, include HR as a mandatory part of project approval processes. Accountability of project authorities hold government and private project authorities accountable for negligence in rehabilitation. They could have make transparent decision making also, publish project reports and progress updates in the public domain to ensure transparency. I hope this would clarify your doubts. Thank you.